Most people don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they think on autopilot. They react instead of analyze. They assume instead of question. They follow feelings instead of facts, and they never realize it. Every day you wake up and step into a world designed to confuse you. Information everywhere, opinions everywhere, noise everywhere. News headlines pulling your emotions. Social media feeding your bias. Voices telling you what to believe, how to feel, who to blame. And quietly, subtly, your thinking becomes lazy. Not stupid, lazy. You accept ideas because they sound right. You agree with people because it feels comfortable. You defend beliefs you never actually examined. And over time, this costs you. Bad decisions, poor judgment, missed opportunities, emotional reactions that sabotage your future. This audiobook exists because clear thinking is becoming rare, and rare skills create unfair advantages. Welcome to Improve Your Critical Thinking. This is not about being clever in arguments. This is not about winning debates. This is about seeing clearly when others are confused, thinking calmly when others panic, making strong decisions when others hesitate. Critical thinking is not negativity. It is mental discipline. It is the ability to slow down your mind when the world speeds up, to separate truth from persuasion, to recognize manipulation before it controls you. Ask yourself honestly, how many of your beliefs did you choose? And how many were handed to you? How many opinions are truly yours? And how many were absorbed without resistance? Most people never ask these questions because questioning feels uncomfortable. It challenges identity. It creates uncertainty. But uncertainty is where growth begins. Critical thinkers are not louder than others. They are calmer. They don't rush to conclusions. They don't react emotionally to every trigger. They don't need to be right immediately. They observe. They ask, what am I missing? Who benefits from this idea? What evidence would prove me wrong? And that single habit separates leaders from followers. This audiobook will train you to identify faulty thinking patterns, break emotional bias, see manipulation clearly, think independently under pressure, make decisions based on clarity, not impulse. You will learn why smart people still make terrible choices, why confidence often hides ignorance, why emotions distort logic, and how to rebuild your thinking from the ground up. This is not about memorizing techniques. This is about rewiring how you process reality, because the quality of your life will never exceed the quality of your thinking. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't learn how to think clearly, someone else will think for you. They will decide what you fear, what you want, what you believe is possible. Critical thinking is not optional anymore. It is survival. In the next chapter, we will expose the mental traps that quietly sabotage intelligent people every single day. Traps you may already be falling into without realizing it. And once you see them, you will never think the same way again. Chapter 2. The Traps That Steal Your Intelligence. Before we go any further, understand this. You don't lose clarity all at once. You lose it slowly, quietly, through habits of thought you never question. Critical thinking doesn't collapse because of ignorance. It collapses because of mental shortcuts. Your brain is designed to save energy, to simplify, to assume, to jump to conclusions instead of analyzing every detail. And most of the time, that works. But when the world becomes complex, when decisions carry consequences, when emotions run high, those shortcuts become traps. Let's expose them. The first trap is confirmation bias. You don't search for truth. You search for agreement. You notice information that supports what you already believe, and ignore anything that challenges it. Not because you're dishonest, because disagreement feels threatening. Your brain wants consistency, not accuracy. That's why two intelligent people can see the same event and reach completely different conclusions, both convinced they are right. Critical thinkers train themselves to do the opposite. They actively seek opposing views. They ask, what if I'm wrong? They treat disagreement as data, not disrespect, because truth does not fear examination. The second trap is emotional reasoning. You feel something strongly, so you assume it must be true. Anger becomes evidence. Fear becomes logic. Confidence becomes proof. But emotions are signals, not verdicts. They tell you how you feel, not what is real. Smart people still make terrible decisions when they confuse intensity with accuracy. Critical thinkers pause. They ask, is this feeling helpful? Is it distorting my perception? What facts exist beyond my reaction? They don't suppress emotion. They separate it from judgment. The third trap is authority bias. You assume someone is right because they sound confident. They have status. They speak loudly. They have followers. But confidence is not competence. Popularity is not proof. And authority does not guarantee truth. History is filled with confident experts who were catastrophically wrong. Critical thinkers respect expertise, but they still verify. They ask, what is the evidence? What assumptions are being made? What incentives might influence this message? They listen carefully, without surrendering their mind. The fourth trap is binary thinking, black or white, right or wrong, good or bad. This kind of thinking feels clean and decisive, but reality is rarely that simple. Most important decisions live in gray areas. Critical thinkers resist extremes. They understand that. Two things can be true at the same time. Progress can include failure. Someone can be wrong without being evil. Nuance is not weakness, it is maturity. And the final trap, the most dangerous one, is mental laziness. The belief that thinking deeply is unnecessary. I already know enough. It's obvious. Everyone agrees. That's just how it is. These phrases shut down growth. The moment you stop questioning, you stop evolving. Critical thinking is not about knowing more answers. It's about asking better questions. Questions that slow the mind. Questions that expose assumptions. Questions that reveal what others overlook. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment. Reflect. How many decisions in your life were made emotionally? How many beliefs were inherited, not chosen? How often do you react instead of reason? This awareness is not meant to shame you. It's meant to wake you up. Because once you see these traps, you can no longer pretend they aren't there. And in the next chapter, we will take this further into the uncomfortable territory of ego, identity, and why defending your beliefs often matters more to you than discovering the truth. That is where real thinking begins. Chapter 3. Ego. The enemy disguised as confidence. If you want to understand why smart people stop thinking clearly, you must understand ego. Not arrogance, not pride in achievement. Ego is subtler than that. Ego is the voice that says, I already know. I can't be wrong. If I change my mind, I lose. Ego does not protect truth. It protects identity. And once your beliefs become part of who you are, questioning them feels like an attack. That is why arguments escalate. That is why conversations turn hostile. That is why people defend ideas that no longer serve them. They are not defending logic. They are defending themselves. Critical thinking requires something rare, the courage to separate who you are from what you believe. Your beliefs are tools, not tattoos. They are meant to be adjusted as reality reveals more information. But ego hates adjustment. Ego wants certainty. Ego wants stability. Ego wants to be right, even at the cost of being wrong. This is where most people get stuck. They stop learning not because they lack intelligence, but because learning would require admitting ignorance. And ego treats ignorance like weakness. But here is the truth most people never hear. The strongest minds are not the loudest. They are the most flexible. They bend without breaking. They update without collapsing. They change without losing direction. Think about it. Every major breakthrough in your life likely came from a moment when you realized, I was wrong. I didn't understand. I need to rethink this. That wasn't failure. That was growth. Critical thinkers train themselves to welcome correction, not emotionally, not instantly, but deliberately. They ask, What evidence would change my mind? If someone smarter disagrees, what might they see that I don't? What am I emotionally invested in believing? These questions feel uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is the price of clarity. Ego also feeds on social validation, likes, agreement, belonging. Your brain is wired to avoid isolation. So you align your opinions with your group, your politics, your culture, your profession, not because it's true, but because it's safe. Critical thinking often feels lonely, because truth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it costs approval. Sometimes it costs status. Sometimes it costs comfort. That's why most people don't do it. They prefer certainty over accuracy, belonging over honesty, confidence over clarity. But if you are listening to this, something in you wants more. You don't want to be right. You want to be effective. You don't want to win arguments. You want to make better decisions. You don't want comfort. You want control. And control begins with humility, not the kind that shrinks you, the kind that sharpens you. The humility to say, I don't know yet. I need more information. I could be mistaken. That sentence alone places you ahead of most people, because the moment ego loosens its grip, your mind becomes agile again. In the next chapter, we will move from mindset to method. You will learn how critical thinkers structure decisions, analyze information, and avoid manipulation, even when pressure is high and time is limited. This is where thinking stops being abstract and becomes a skill. Chapter 4. How smart thinkers structure decisions. Clear thinking is not a personality trait. It is a process. Most people think by reacting. Critical thinkers think by design. When pressure rises, emotions speak first. When stakes increase, shortcuts feel tempting. When time feels limited, assumptions take control. This is exactly when mistakes are most expensive. Smart thinkers don't rely on instincts alone. They rely on structure. They slow the moment down, even when everything feels urgent. Here is the first rule they follow. Separate facts from interpretations. Facts are observable. Interpretations are stories. A message was not replied to. That's a fact. They don't respect me. That's a story. The market dipped. That's a fact. This means everything is collapsing. That's a story. Most emotional decisions come from confusing the two. Critical thinkers pause and ask, what do I know for certain? What am I assuming? What evidence supports this conclusion? That pause alone prevents countless bad decisions. The second rule is just as important. Think in probabilities, not absolutes. The world is not black or white. It is gradients, likelihoods, trade-offs. Weak thinkers ask, is this good or bad? Strong thinkers ask, how likely is each outcome? What are the risks? What happens if I'm wrong? This mindset removes emotional attachment. You stop needing certainty. You start managing risk. This is how investors think, how strategists think, how leaders think. They don't ask for guarantees, they prepare for scenarios. The third rule, invert the problem. Instead of asking, how do I succeed? They ask, how could this fail? Instead of asking, how do I make the best choice? They ask, what would make this a terrible decision? This flips blind optimism into clarity. Most people only imagine success. Critical thinkers imagine failure first, then design around it. This is not pessimism. It is precision. The fourth rule is uncomfortable but powerful. Delay judgment. Your brain wants closure. It wants an answer now. But speed often sacrifices accuracy. Smart thinkers are willing to say, I need more data. I haven't seen enough yet. This isn't clear. They don't rush to conclusions to feel smart. They wait to be correct. The fifth rule, ask better questions instead of hunting faster answers. Bad questions create bad thinking. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who should I blame? Better questions sound like, what's actually happening beneath the surface? What incentives are at play? What would change my opinion? This is how you avoid manipulation. Because manipulation doesn't attack logic. It hijacks emotion, fear, urgency, authority, social pressure. Critical thinkers recognize these signals immediately. Any time you hear, "Everyone agrees," you must decide now. Only an idiot would disagree. Your thinking should slow down, not speed up, because pressure is rarely aligned with truth. Finally, smart thinkers review decisions after they're made, not to punish themselves, but to improve the system. They ask, what worked? What didn't? What bias showed up? What will I adjust next time? This is how thinking compounds. Most people repeat mistakes because they never analyze them. Critical thinkers turn every outcome, good or bad, into data. And over time, their judgment becomes sharper than luck, more reliable than instinct, stronger than emotion. In the next chapter, we will expose the mental traps that quietly sabotage even intelligent people. Traps so common you may not realize how often they shape your choices. Once you see them, you won't unsee them. And once you stop falling into them, your thinking changes permanently. Chapter 5. The mental traps that sabotage clear thinking. The most dangerous thinking errors are not loud. They are quiet. They feel reasonable. They feel familiar. And that's why they control so many lives. Critical thinking is not just about learning how to think better. It's about learning how your mind already tricks you. Because intelligence does not protect you from bias. In fact, intelligence often makes bias harder to detect. Smart people don't have fewer blind spots. They just justify them better. Let's expose the traps. The first trap is confirmation bias. Your brain loves being right. So it searches for information that agrees with what it already believes and ignores what doesn't. You read headlines that match your opinions. You trust sources that validate your worldview. You dismiss opposing ideas as stupid, corrupt, or uninformed. Not because you've examined them, but because disagreement feels uncomfortable. Critical thinkers do the opposite. They actively look for evidence that challenges them. They ask, what would prove me wrong? What am I avoiding hearing? What if the opposite were true? Truth survives scrutiny. Ego does not. The second trap is emotional reasoning. This sounds like, I feel this is wrong, so it must be. I'm angry, so they must be guilty. I'm afraid, so something bad is coming. Feelings are data, but they are not conclusions. Emotions evolve to protect you, not to analyze reality. Fear exaggerates threats. Anger simplifies complexity. Excitement blinds you to risk. Critical thinkers notice emotion, then step back from it. They ask, what would I think if I felt calm? What decision would I make tomorrow instead of today? Is this reaction helping or controlling me? The third trap is authority bias. We trust confidence. We trust titles. We trust loud certainty. If someone sounds sure enough, we assume they're right. But confidence is not competence. Status is not accuracy. Volume is not truth. Critical thinkers respect expertise, but verify claims. They ask, what evidence supports this? What incentives might influence this person? Who benefits if I believe this? They don't surrender their thinking to anyone. The fourth trap is groupthink. Humans are social creatures. Belonging feels safer than standing alone. So we nod along. We stay quiet. We agree, even when something feels off. But consensus is not correctness. Entire groups can be wrong. Entire cultures can believe false things. Entire systems can run on flawed assumptions. Critical thinkers tolerate discomfort. They ask, what am I afraid to say? What happens if I disagree? Is silence protecting me or limiting me? Progress has always started with someone willing to question the group. The fifth trap is short-term thinking. Immediate relief feels good. Long-term consequences feel distant. So we choose comfort over growth, ease over discipline, now over later. Critical thinkers stretch their timeline. They ask, how will this decision look in 5 years? What habits am I reinforcing? What future self am I training today? They understand this truth. Every small decision votes for the person you become. The final trap is the most subtle, the illusion of understanding. You think you understand something until you try to explain it. Critical thinkers test clarity. They simplify, they explain, they break ideas down until only the truth remains. If something cannot be explained clearly, it is not understood deeply. This is why they teach themselves constantly, because clarity is power. In the next chapter, we'll move from defense to offense, from avoiding mistakes to building a mind that thinks independently, confidently, and sharply in any situation. This is where critical thinking becomes a lifelong advantage. Stay with me. Chapter 6. Building a mind that thinks for itself. Most people don't think. They react. They repeat. They recycle ideas they inherited without ever questioning where those ideas came from. Critical thinking begins the moment you stop outsourcing your mind. Because independence of thought is not arrogance. It is responsibility. This chapter is about building a mind that does not panic under pressure, does not collapse under noise, and does not follow crowds blindly. A mind that can stand alone. The first pillar of independent thinking is slowing down. Fast reactions feel powerful. Quick answers feel confident. But speed is not intelligence. The best thinkers pause. They create space between stimulus and response. They don't rush to comment. They don't rush to judge. They don't rush to choose sides. They understand something most people forget. The fastest reaction is rarely the wisest one. When you slow down, you notice more. When you pause, you regain control. When you wait, clarity emerges. This is not weakness. This is dominance over impulse. The second pillar is question framing. Weak thinkers ask, who's right? What should I believe? Which side is correct? Strong thinkers ask better questions. What's missing here? What assumptions are being made? What information would change my mind? Your answers are only as powerful as your questions. Change the question, and you change the entire direction of your thinking. The third pillar is thinking in layers. Most people think at the surface level. They see events, not patterns. They hear words, not motives. They notice outcomes, not systems. Critical thinkers go deeper. They ask, what caused this? What incentives are at play? What pattern does this fit into? They don't just see what happened. They see why it keeps happening. And once you understand the system, you can predict outcomes instead of being surprised by them. The fourth pillar is mental flexibility. Rigid minds break. Flexible minds adapt. Independent thinkers are not emotionally attached to being right. They change their minds when new evidence appears. They update beliefs. They refine perspectives. This is not inconsistency. This is growth. Only insecure minds cling to outdated ideas to protect ego. Strong minds evolve. They understand, changing your mind doesn't mean you were weak before. It means you are smarter now. The fifth pillar is first principles thinking. Instead of asking, what do people usually do? They ask, what actually makes sense? They strip problems down to fundamentals. They remove assumptions. They rebuild from the ground up. This is how innovation happens. This is how breakthroughs are born. This is how you escape average thinking. The final pillar is self-awareness. You cannot think clearly if you don't understand yourself. Your fears, your desires, your triggers, your blind spots. Independent thinkers watch their own mind. They notice when emotion hijacks logic. They catch themselves rationalizing. They question their own motives. They don't trust themselves blindly. They audit themselves honestly. And this is the paradox. The more you question yourself, the more reliable your thinking becomes. Because self-awareness is the foundation of wisdom. In the next chapter, we'll explore how critical thinkers make better decisions under uncertainty, how they choose when information is incomplete, and how they stay calm when outcomes are unclear. This is where thinking turns into action. Chapter 7. Thinking clearly when nothing is certain. Most decisions in life are made without complete information. There is no perfect data, no guaranteed outcomes, no certainty. And yet, decisions must still be made. This is where most people freeze. Or worse, guess emotionally. Critical thinkers operate differently. They don't wait for certainty. They learn how to think clearly inside uncertainty. Because clarity is not about knowing everything. It's about knowing enough, and knowing how to proceed anyway. The first rule of decision-making under uncertainty is this: separate facts from feelings. Feelings are loud. They demand immediate action. They exaggerate risk. They distort probability. Facts are quiet. They don't rush you. They don't beg. They simply exist. Critical thinkers slow down long enough to ask, what do I know for sure? What am I assuming? What am I afraid of? Most bad decisions aren't logical failures. They are emotional shortcuts. When fear leads, logic follows blindly. The second rule is probability thinking. Average thinkers ask, will this work or fail? Critical thinkers ask, what is the likelihood? What are the possible outcomes? What is the downside if I'm wrong? They don't need guarantees. They calculate risk. They understand that life is not binary, it is probabilistic. Success is rarely a single decision. It is a series of decisions that increase the odds. The third rule is reversibility. Not all decisions are equal. Some decisions are doors you can walk back through, others lock behind you. Critical thinkers ask, if this goes wrong, can I recover? How expensive is failure? What is the cost of waiting? They don't obsess over small, reversible choices. They save deep thinking for irreversible ones. This prevents overthinking. This preserves mental energy. This keeps momentum alive. The fourth rule is second-order thinking. Most people think one step ahead. Critical thinkers think 2, 3, even 4 steps ahead. They ask, if this succeeds, what happens next? If this fails, what does that create? What unintended consequences might follow? They don't just react to outcomes, they anticipate ripple effects. This is how smart people avoid traps that look attractive at first glance. The fifth rule is emotional distance. The best decisions are rarely made in emotional heat. Critical thinkers create distance. They sleep on it. They write it down. They imagine advising someone else. Why? Because advice we give others is usually wiser than advice we give ourselves. Distance restores objectivity. The final rule is commitment once decided. Indecision is often disguised as thinking. But overthinking is not intelligence. It's fear wearing a disguise. Critical thinkers decide, then commit fully. No second-guessing, no mental backtracking, no emotional wobbling. They understand that execution matters more than perfection. A good decision executed well beats a perfect decision executed late. In the next chapter, we'll uncover the cognitive traps that silently sabotage thinking, the mental shortcuts that feel logical but lead you astray, and how to protect your mind from manipulation, including your own. Because the greatest enemy of clear thinking is the illusion that you're already thinking clearly. Chapter 8. The hidden traps that sabotage smart thinking. The most dangerous thinking errors are not obvious. They don't announce themselves. They don't feel irrational. They feel normal. That's what makes them so powerful. Critical thinking isn't just about learning how to think better. It's about learning how not to be fooled, especially by your own mind. The first trap is confirmation bias. This is the tendency to look for information that agrees with what you already believe and ignore anything that challenges it. Your mind wants comfort, not truth. So it searches for articles that support your opinion, people who think like you, evidence that makes you feel right. Critical thinkers do the opposite. They actively seek disconfirming evidence. They ask, what would prove me wrong? What am I missing? What would someone smarter than me criticize here? Truth survives scrutiny. Ego does not. The second trap is authority bias. Just because someone is confident, successful, well-spoken, or popular doesn't mean they're right. Critical thinkers respect expertise, but they don't outsource thinking. They separate credentials from logic. They ask, does this argument stand on its own? Is the reasoning solid? Are the incentives aligned? They know that confidence can be manufactured. Logic cannot. The third trap is availability bias. Your brain assumes that what is most vivid, recent, or emotional is also most important. That's why dramatic stories feel more convincing than statistics. That's why rare events feel common. That's why fear spreads faster than facts. Critical thinkers zoom out. They ask, how common is this really? Is this representative or just memorable? What does the broader data say? They don't confuse loudness with likelihood. The fourth trap is sunk cost fallacy. This is the belief that because you've already invested time, money, or energy into something, you must continue, even when it's clearly not working. Critical thinkers cut losses early. They understand past cost is irrelevant. Only future value matters. They ask, if I were starting today, would I choose this again? If the answer is no, they walk away without regret. The fifth trap is binary thinking, right or wrong, success or failure, win or lose. Reality doesn't work that way. Critical thinkers think in spectrums. They recognize nuance. They hold multiple possibilities at once. They ask, what's the middle ground? What's partially true on both sides? What's the trade-off? This is why they stay flexible while others stay stuck. The sixth trap is emotional reasoning. I feel this is true, so it must be. I feel uncomfortable, so it must be wrong. Feelings are signals, not evidence. Critical thinkers respect emotions, but they don't let emotions drive conclusions. They pause. They label the feeling. Then they return to logic. Emotion informs, reason decides. The final trap is overconfidence. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. People who think they understand everything rarely understand much. Critical thinkers stay humble. They update their beliefs. They revise opinions without shame. They don't cling to being right. They cling to getting it right. Because clarity is not a destination. It's a discipline. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to train your mind daily to think sharper, calmer, and more independently. How to build thinking habits that compound over time, and how to turn critical thinking into a personal advantage in work, relationships, and life. Because once you learn how to think clearly, you begin to see the world and yourself very differently. Chapter 9. Training your mind to think sharper every day. Critical thinking is not a talent. It's not something you're born with or without. It's a skill, and like every skill, it strengthens with daily use. You don't train your body once and expect it to stay strong forever. You don't train your mind once either. You build it. Repetition by repetition, decision by decision. The first daily practice is slowing down your conclusions. Most people don't think, they react. They hear something and instantly decide. They feel something and instantly act. They assume understanding without verification. Critical thinkers insert a pause, a small gap between stimulus and response. That pause is power. In that moment they ask, what am I assuming? What else could be true? What information do I not yet have? This single habit alone eliminates countless mistakes. The second practice is question discipline. High-quality thinking starts with high-quality questions. Instead of asking, how do I get what I want fast? Ask, what's the long-term consequence? What problem am I actually solving? What would this look like if done well? Instead of asking, who's right? Ask, what's useful here? What's true regardless of opinion? Your questions shape your thinking shapes your outcomes. The third practice is mental inversion. Instead of asking how to succeed, ask how to fail. Instead of asking how to improve, ask what destroys progress. Ask what habits would guarantee failure. What mistakes ruin relationships? What thinking patterns sabotage success? Then do the opposite. Avoiding stupidity is often more powerful than chasing brilliance. The fourth practice is thinking in models. Critical thinkers don't memorize facts. They understand frameworks, cause and effect, incentives, trade-offs, probability, second-order consequences. They don't just ask, what happens next? They ask, what happens after that? They understand that every decision creates ripples, some immediate, some delayed, some invisible until it's too late. The fifth practice is writing things down. Thoughts in your head feel complete. On paper, they reveal gaps. Writing forces clarity. It exposes weak logic. It turns vague ideas into testable ones. Critical thinkers externalize their thinking. They journal. They outline decisions. They map pros and cons. They record lessons. If you can't explain your thinking clearly, you don't understand it yet. The sixth practice is separating identity from ideas. Most people defend ideas as if they're defending themselves. Attack the belief, and they feel attacked. Critical thinkers detach. They say, this is my current view, not my identity. I can change my mind without losing value. I don't need to be right to be strong. This emotional separation makes learning faster and deeper. The seventh practice is calibrating confidence. Critical thinkers are not indecisive. They are precise. They say, I'm 60% confident. I'm uncertain here. I need more information. This honesty doesn't weaken them. It sharpens them. They know when to act boldly. They know when to wait. They don't confuse confidence with certainty. The eighth practice is post-decision review. After a choice is made, they don't move on blindly. They ask, what worked? What didn't? What did I miss? What would I change next time? They turn outcomes into feedback, feedback into learning, learning into advantage. This is how thinking compounds, day by day, decision by decision. Most people live inside their thoughts. Critical thinkers step outside them. And once you learn to do that, you gain something rare. Perspective. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together. How clear thinking transforms your confidence, your relationships, your decisions, and your future. Because when you stop thinking wrong, you don't just become smarter. You become harder to manipulate, harder to confuse, harder to control, and much harder to stop. Chapter 10. Clear thinking is the ultimate advantage. Everything you've learned so far leads to this moment. Because critical thinking is not just about being smart. It's about living well. It's about walking through a chaotic world without being dragged by it. It's about making decisions with intention instead of impulse. It's about standing steady while others panic, overreact, or follow noise. Clear thinking is quiet power. When you think clearly, your confidence changes. Not loud confidence, not performative confidence, but grounded certainty. You don't need to convince people. You don't need validation. You don't need to win every argument. You trust your judgment because it's been tested. When you think clearly, your relationships change. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop misinterpreting intent. You stop escalating unnecessary conflict. You listen better. You respond instead of explode. You understand before judging. You become harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, harder to control. And people feel it. They may not know why, but they respect your presence. When you think clearly, your decisions change. You stop chasing short-term comfort. You stop confusing urgency with importance. You stop sacrificing the future for the present. You choose based on outcomes, not emotions. Principles, not pressure. Strategy, not impulse. Your life begins to feel intentional. When you think clearly, your identity changes. You stop identifying as someone who is confused, stuck, or overwhelmed. You become someone who figures things out, someone who can pause, analyze, decide, adjust, someone who doesn't need certainty to move forward, only clarity. And here's the truth most people never realize. The world doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards judgment. It rewards those who see patterns others miss, those who avoid obvious traps, those who don't panic when emotions run high, those who can think. This is why critical thinking is not optional anymore. We live in an age of information overload. Endless opinions, endless outrage, endless noise, and most people are drowning in it. But you don't have to. You can choose clarity, you can choose discipline. You can choose to think instead of react. You can train your mind to slow down when everything speeds up, to question when others follow, to remain calm when others collapse. That is real intelligence. That is real power. And it doesn't require luck, or genius, or perfect circumstances. It requires practice. One pause at a time. One question at a time. One decision at a time. So here's your final challenge. The next time you feel triggered, pause. The next time you feel rushed, slow down. The next time you feel certain, question it. Think before you act. Think before you speak. Think before you decide. Because once you stop thinking wrong, you don't just improve your mind. You upgrade your entire life. If this audiobook challenged the way you think, share it with someone who needs clarity. If a line hit hard, write it down. Don't let it disappear. And if you want more audiobooks on mindset, psychology, discipline, or mental strength, let us know what topic you want next. Your mind is your greatest asset. Train it, protect it, and use it well.